Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new build in my series, Building Nancy Drew in The Sims 4. Today, I am bringing you the Bog Hut from the 19th mystery in the Nancy Drew series, Nancy Drew, The Haunting of Castle Malloy. This Bog Hut is definitely one of my favorite locations in the game. I think it is so fun. It gives me serious Hagrid's Hut vibes, which I absolutely love. And it's a really fun, small space that I had a ton of fun cluttering up. The Bog Hut is definitely hidden too. You have to cross the bog to find it, which I love. I am always down for forbidden, hidden locations in the game. Those are always my favorite ones because there's just an added level of mystery and intrigue to a space that you really have to hunt down. So finding this space always feels like such a big win. It is a really tiny hut, like very small. I actually probably should have classified it as a micro home because I'm pretty sure that's what it is if you have the tiny living stuff pack, because it's literally just the one room. And I also made this hut off the grid, so it doesn't have functioning plumbing and it doesn't have functioning electricity, so it's completely off the grid. The only things on the inside of the Bog Hut that are really amenities, there's a bed for sleeping, and I did add a fridge, the really old school looking fridge that looks like an ice box and looks like it could conceivably be in an off the grid kind of space. I did add that as well. So your Sims could live here and get all of their needs met because the hut is also surrounded by a bog, which makes sense because it's the Bog Hut. But all of the water is something that the Sims can actually swim in to get their hygiene up. It takes a really long time and it's super annoying to do it that way, but you can do it that way. Or you can just let your Sim be kind of smelly and hang out and never really have their hygiene need met. That's certainly an option as well. I do also put one of the woohoo bushes outside so that your Sim can relieve their bathroom need. So all of the needs can realistically be met, but in the nature of an off-the-grid kind of space, it would be very tricky, which I think is definitely the case for the character who lives here in the game as well. I think the idea is that the hut is supposed to be really old, very with nature, very surrounded by earth, and you can tell on the inside too, just with the number of herbs that the character gathers, that they really are living off the land entirely, which I think is really cool. This was a surprisingly tricky space to decorate in the fact that it is so cluttered, which makes sense because it's such a small space. There's obviously a lot of things that you need to fit into the small space in order to be able to sustain yourself. The fact that there's only one person living here makes that a little bit easier, but even still, I just made sure to clutter up essentially every surface that could possibly be cluttered up. To the right of this table workstation, there's a bunch of baskets, which in the game you find the jetpack in one of those baskets. So again, keeping in the style of these recreations, if there's something that you can interact with, I do try to include something in the build that kind of is reminiscent of that interactive object. And then this table here is also an interactive space that Nancy can look at and kind of explore, and it is just full of stuff. There's the little locked box, which is actually another interactive item, and I loved this little locked box because I thought it looked very similar to the one in the game. And instead of a sheep doll midway in the process of being made, I used a Yarny toy from the Nifty Knitting stuff packs, and a couple other things from the knitting pack too, just to help clutter up the space. Again, if this Sim is living completely off the land, I think it's entirely likely that they would have the knitting skill or a sewing skill of some sort so that they can make and mend their own clothes, because there really would be no other way to get clothes. So I thought that made a lot of sense. And then basically any empty space that didn't have an object, I either cluttered up with candles or plants, something very naturey and very rustic feeling, which is one of my favorite styles of decoration. I definitely love the way that rustic styles of builds look, so I did have a lot of fun with this one. It definitely was a challenge though. I wish that the move objects on cheat in The Sims, it gives you more options with where to put things, but as you can see with these candles here, I essentially had to fill in the entire table, all of the slots on this candle, before I could put a candle up here on this chest, and it was just so frustrating. It's like, I wish that when you turn on the move objects cheat, that it would just let you freely place objects wherever. Like, there wouldn't be limitations to where the object can go, and they wouldn't automatically clip into the slots, because I think the slots are super useful if you don't have the cheat on, but if you do have the cheat on, clearly you're not interested in having the slots anymore. So I wish they would just let us free move them as if there was no slots there, but I digress. That is a complaint of mine, and it was really only a big deal in this particular build because I had to clutter up these spaces so much with so many different things, which again was a fun and unique challenge. I really enjoyed this space. Oh, this was super frustrating too because I sized down these dressers to be able to look like little filing cabinets or little drawers, and when you size down objects that have slots on the top of them, like dressers or tables, the slot stays in the same place even though the object looks smaller. So the slots for those dressers were way up by the ceiling, and I was trying to put these peppers on top of them because I wanted to fill in the space with the jars, and it took much longer than I wanted it to. Little nitpicky things in this build that I had to finagle around a little bit. Again, fun challenge, but there are some times when in The Sims you just kind of wish that things were just a little bit different because it would make your life so much easier. That's the case too with the debug menu, which I did also utilize quite a bit for this. Those are all the hidden objects that you don't necessarily get to see in the catalog normally that you can search through. If that was organized, that would make my life so much easier. And Twisted Mexi actually just came out with a mod that does just that. I've tried it out once in another build that I'm hoping to release next week, but that makes a huge difference already. And it's just, we have to rely on modders to do stuff like that, which is, a theme in The Sims. I definitely wanted to include hanging plants because I thought that was perfect for the vibe of this space. This space is unique in terms of recreations because we do see essentially every inch of it. There are a couple angles that we don't necessarily see, a couple ways that Nancy doesn't necessarily turn, so we can't see. But because we do get to see so much of it, it meant that I had to try and recreate all of the details as closely as possible. So you'll see me looking very often for the perfect object or searching through the catalog quite a bit, just trying to find things to make it look exactly right, because that's ultimately my goal with these recreations within reason, within the restraints of The Sims 4. So I hope that you guys end up liking how it turned out. I do think it would be a fun lot to play in purely because it's so off the grid that I think it would be kind of like a fun challenge to bring a sim here and see if they can live and be happy here and have a little life here. I think that would be a lot of fun, especially if that sim were to have a vegetable garden and kind of expand the space a little bit. I do also outside put a wash tub and a clothesline so they can do laundry, which I think is another fun challenge to have for an off-the-grid kind of style of gameplay. So now you're starting to see just how cluttered this space is. I had a lot of fun putting all these debug items on the tops of these shelves here and just finding things that would work. I figured that the character who lives here would definitely have random frogs and random fossils that they've found around on the estate, feathers from birds, especially crows, because we know that this character is very fond of crows and or ravens. I think they're crows. I think they are specifically crows. I should be using my warnings at Waverly Academy knowledge here and doing my best to tell apart the crows and the ravens, but even with the advice that we get in that game, I still cannot tell crows and ravens apart. Because even when I see a big blackbird, I'm like, okay, is it just a big crow or is it a raven? I don't know. Let me know if you've found an easy way to tell apart crows and ravens. I'm having a little snack while I'm working on this video and this recording as well. I have a sparkling black tea with peach juice from Trader Joe's and a couple of chocolate hazelnut cookies also from Trader Joe's. I had a kind of a tough start to the week at work this week, and I was like, you know what would make me feel better and where I haven't gone in a long time? A run to Trader Joe's would make me feel a lot better, and I'm just going to go and I'm going to get basically anything that catches my eye as far as non-perishable foods and frozen goods. So I could get a nice big haul, and then Mr. Wizard Kitten and I would have yummy snacks and treats and quick dinners for when we're just not feeling it and I don't feel like cooking. So I did that, and it made me feel a lot better. And it's really nice to have these fun little snacks in the afternoon. I love Trader Joe's. Good stuff. Do you guys love Trader Joe's? Let me know your favorites in the comments. They have this butternut squash mac and cheese, which I'm really excited to try because you know me, I love fall, and squash is genuinely one of my favorite vegetables. Like, I love to eat squash. All varieties of it I think are so good, and you can do so much with it. Even just putting butter and salt and pepper on squash is like, yum, that's so good. Simple, classic, heartwarming, delicious. And it is probably peak for our leaves right now here where I live in Minnesota, which is so exciting. I'm probably going to have to go on a walk after I do this recording, even though it's 80 degrees outside today, which is absurd. It's absurd for October in Minnesota. No thank you. I would like to go back to the 40-degree weather, please. But despite that, the leaves are in peak form. So many different colors. I'll probably have to post something on the Instagram story so that you guys in places where the leaves aren't changing yet can get a nice little taste of fall. For those that don't know, the channel is on Instagram as well. You can follow at WizardKittenYT, and that is linked in the description, as well as our Discord as well. So if you've been curious about that, now you know. So yeah, now we are cluttering up this little area of the hut, which we don't necessarily see in the game, so I kind of just used my imagination as to what would be over here. I figured a lot of the food would be pickled and preserved and canned and kept in jars and stuff like that. So there's this giant jar of olives over here, cooking supplies, baskets, and I thought the icebox actually looked really good as far as a functional refrigerator, because it doesn't necessarily look like a refrigerator. It does just look like a fancy kind of storage thing. So I think it works because you can see the produce through it. So I feel like it doesn't look too modern or anything for this kind of build. I have not player tested this build yet, so I am not positive if Sims can actually even get through the door because this space is so very crowded. So I will probably have to do that before I upload this to the gallery. That is, my gallery ID is also linked in the description of this video, Spirit Scarlet 100. But you guys saw me just place this insect cage and this frog. The insect cage is actually a will-o'-the-wisp, which you can catch in The Sims 4 if you are sneaky enough and if you can find them. They are around Granite Falls at nighttime, and I think it's so fun that you can catch will-o'-the-wisps, and I thought it was perfect for this build. Like, how could I not put a will-o'-the-wisp inside this Irish bog hut that's off the grid and spooky and kind of mysterious? I was so excited when I found that in the debug menu because I wouldn't have thought of that, but I just happened to come across it and I was like, oh my gosh, will-o'-the-wisp, this is perfect. So exciting. And now we are moving on to the outside of the bog hut. So you saw me right there just place a couple of the woohoo bushes, which again, your Sims can use to use the bathroom. And then I also placed the fire pit so that your Sims can cook some hot food. They can cook your standard campfire fare, but what I love with the off the grid, you don't even need the trait to do this, but what I love about it is that you can go fishing and then bring fish back and cook like fish over the fire and have a fried fish, or you can catch bugs and then you can roast beetles over the fire and have roast beetles. So you can very much live off the land with this build, which I think, again, would be a really fun challenge. So if that's your kind of gameplay, hopefully this build will be perfect for you. I initially had a light. I just placed a ceiling light in the middle of the hut to have it lit up to help me be able to build it, but I didn't want to keep that light in there because it obviously felt too light, and I only wanted candles in this space, or lanterns like the one that I just placed. So it's very dark, very eerie, very spooky, just like it's supposed to feel, and it's only light that could be produced by a person. So I don't know where this character is getting the wax. You could always put a bee house outside and they could have beeswax. They could also grow soy plants, but I seriously doubt that the character in Nancy Drew is growing soy plants in their garden, but maybe they are. I don't know. I guess I have no idea. I used a lot of the debug landscaping to try and give this place a really overgrown kind of look. I also wanted to try and use plants that looked like they would kind of be found in a bog. So I didn't use any trees besides the one dead tree, but I did use a lot of like big sprawling bushes and kind of low-lying flowers because that felt more boggy to me. I also used kind of a lot of like brushy plants, kind of the lavender and the lilac, the big palm fronds and everything. Stuff like that feels very bog-y to me. I can't say that I've ever been in an actual bog, at least I don't think I have. So I'm not necessarily positive, but that's the vibe that I've gotten from like movies that I've seen or games like this that I've played. It's just very mossy and wet, so I don't think that trees would go very well, so it'd have to be low-lying plants. So I used a ton of them, tried to keep it very busy while still kind of trying to keep it realistic and I guess classy overgrown, if you will, just so that it looks a little bit better. And now I'm working here on the actual like bog part. It would be kind of fun if there was the entire maze that led to the bog, but you would need a huge lot for that, and that sounds extremely complicated. So what I did instead was just kind of create the illusion of a bog around the outside, and I do actually place little cairns around different parts of this bog too, which I was really excited about because that's very similar to the game. I think cairns are adorable. I love cairns. So now just adding in some of the water plants, and then I add a ton of the bubble features and the steam features to give the bog a very murky kind of look. The water is super dark and green. Definitely not a place that you would want to fall into, but again, that would be the only way that your sim could get their hygiene up is by swimming in this water. So do what you gotta do. Your sim will be fine. There's nothing mysterious in these waters. They're not gonna sink down like you would in the game itself, so do what you gotta do. For the terrain paint for this too, I wanted to use this really dark dirt because it reminded me of like mud and more of that like boggy, peaty type wet soil kind of look. So I use a lot of this dark brown to really highlight a lot of the things on the ground, give it more of a shadow effect, and it just helps the landscaping look a little bit more realistic to have dirt under it. It's surprising, honestly, how huge of a difference it makes, I feel at least. So definitely wanted to make sure I did that, outline the entire bog, and then the last thing I do is to fill in the entirety of the outside of this pool with plants and rocks so that you can't necessarily see the lining of the pool itself, because I wanted it to look like a more natural pond. I didn't want it to look super swimmable. I wanted it to look like a really nasty pond. So that was my goal. Hopefully I achieved it, but you guys will have to let me know down in the comments what you think about this build. We are coming up on the screenshots here very soon, so if you enjoyed this build, please feel free to hit the like button. If you have any other ideas for me or any other thoughts that you'd like to share, I'm always willing to respond to comments. I love to do that, so please feel free to leave me your thoughts, and please feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you are interested. I love welcoming new fellow detectives to our little family. It always makes me very happy to interact with you guys and enjoy Nancy Drew and The Sims together. It's such a positive, fun community, so please feel free to do that as well. Finishing up the pond here now by adding in a couple rocks and stones, which always makes a pond feel more realistic, at least for me, and then finishing it off, like I mentioned before, with these beautiful little Karens, which made my heart very happy. Thanks for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.